Yes, I'm actually very pleased to be talking on behalf of the PALS and CALS Advisory Council today, letting you know a little bit more about who we are and what the work is that we do. I tend to speak very quickly, so Efrat has asked me to speak slowly, and she's going to wave at me if I talk too fast. So as was mentioned earlier today, that it is actually part of the purpose of the Alliance that what we do is informed by PALS and CALS. So what does that mean and what does that look like? So the PALS and CALS is the people living with ALS and caregivers of people living with ALS Advisory Council is actually the very long name of it. We call it the PALS and CALS Advisory Council, or if you're really in the know, the PCAC. So this council has been charged with helping the board of directors to consider and include in the work that we do the many opinions of people living with ALS. And I think that's really important because when sometimes people will say the voice or the one voice, and what the advisory council has said to us is, we are more than one voice. We want our voices heard. Administratively, we're made up of Kyle Neat as the chair of the Alliance, Kathy Cummings as the executive director of the Alliance, myself, I'm the chair of the PCAC, and Gudjon Sigurdsson is the board liaison. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it here today. We were supposed to present together. Our council members are Mr. Gupta from India, Mia from Belgium, and the people living with ALS MND are Doug Clow from the US, Charles Malcolm from the UK, and Carol Skinner from Canada. The idea of including people living with ALS MND and their caregivers was introduced as part of the strategic plan on our previous strategic plan. You heard a lot today about our current plan moving forward. This was brought up during the 2016 to 2019. Its original form was a PALS inclusion committee of the board, and it was made up of Rob Goldstein from ALS TDI, Barbara Newhouse from the ALS Association, and Kiki Q from Taiwan. At the board meeting in 2016, between the board meeting in 2016 and the board meeting in 2017, they had multiple meetings. There were multiple papers that went around to determine what this was going to look like. And by the first quarter of 2018, a call went out for nominations. And by the second quarter, we had the 5 members of the PCAC who I introduced you to earlier. A little short to see my slides. The advisory council, the inclusion committee was now the advisory council. Evie, as was mentioned earlier, is not here because she had a baby girl. She stepped down as the board liaison, and Gudjon took over, and I took over as the chair. The first step we did was to schedule virtual calls and meetings once a week. And you may say, well, why is that important? Why do you need to tell us that? But this really keeps us on task. If you have any group of people and you're trying to get a committee together, you know that having meetings scheduled regularly helps you to know that you have deliverables that need to come up. The first thing we did, we jumped right in and we reviewed the fundamental rights of people with ALS MND, which is on the Alliance website. Sorry, that was fast to front. We actually recommended that no changes be made to that at this time. It was last reviewed in 2016. We then amended the terms of reference. As was mentioned earlier, it is 5 people on our board, and on our council, and that just is not quite enough. So we also want to increase this to 10. And you'll be hearing more about that at the very end. What are we working on right now? So that's who we are. What are we doing? So we're reviewing a lot of information. We've been sent economic burdens of care, from different countries. Perhaps you received the email from Kathy asking for if your country has ever done a look at what the economic burden of ALS-MND is in your country. If you haven't responded, there is still time because she is filling a Dropbox full of all these documents. We're looking at care surveys that were done in different countries. Colony provided the one from the ALS Association. Nick provided one from the MND Association. We're also looking at the landscape project, which you'll hear much more about later, and giving impact in our impressions. And we're looking at the library on the website. It's very important to the individuals that are on this council that if there are any gaps in the website about information and resources, that they be filled. And so that is one of the things that we're working on. So what we're asking for now is for more people to join us. We're looking for people who are current people living with ALS, MND, or caregivers, not on the board of directors of Alliance, and not a paid staff member of an ALS MND organization, though they may be a volunteer. We're looking for people who are advocates, who want to be involved, who want to do the work, and who have an understanding of the Alliance mission and goals. The time commitment is once a month, phone calls, and then whatever project we're working on, taking the time out. It could be an hour or two a month. It could be 3 or 4 hours a month, depending on what we're looking at. It's a 2-year renewable term, and the nominations form will be open on the website after the symposium through January 15th, because we know some people don't go right back to work after the symposium. So I'm going to open it up for questions at the end because I know that's a little compact, but what we're working on is looking at all these, and it's very important to the individuals who are on this committee that it's a great committee, I just want to say, or council, but it's very important. They wanted to make sure that I let all of you know that they take the responsibilities of reviewing all these documents very seriously, and that they are doing their due diligence in reviewing everything, and that they want to do a good job for the International Alliance. It was important that for them that you all know that. So now, that is the end of my presentation on what it is, so it's open for questions. I could sing. Yes, Andrea. Wait for the microphone, please.
Sara, I'm really glad to see that this is moving along well, because I know this has been a brainchild for several years. It's great to see this. So my question is, what sort of outputs do you expect from this group that you're gathering?
So that's a great question. So we do have specific things that we are asking them. For example, when we reviewed the patient rights on the website, we wanted to know, are there things that you would like changed? So that would be one thing. For the library, we are asking for a table of contents. We want actual, what do you want as resources on the library? Not just, oh, it'd be nice if we had this or that, but specifically. And I can tell you some of the things, since I have time. Some of the items that they have mentioned that are missing have a lot to do with mental health and that kind of support for people living with ALS and their families. So mental health support, that's an area that they see as a gap. What other deliverables? And if you have, like I said, if you've been asked for the economic burden, if you have anything that you want to send to Kathy, go ahead. Yes, Tammy.
One of the other things I think that we had talked about too was when Scientific Advisory Council gives their perspective on an opinion on different issues, maybe you could speak about how PALS and CALS will participate in that as well.
Yeah, so if there's a topic or area of discussion that's happening in the ALS community that the International Alliance would like the council's opinion on, we can ask them and say we'd like to have a position statement from their perspective. We would like their opinions from their perspective on that particular topic or that item. And that would be a written document.
Hi. With your expansion, are you looking to expand with some priority towards different geographical areas that may have different CALS or PALS perspectives?
We absolutely are, yes.
So
we
are
know
there
we're
specific
very
areas that you'd be looking for that people
I
might
don't.
be able to...
It's not that I want to say we want specific areas. I mean, if you look at where we're from, yes, we don't seem to have anyone from the Latin community. You know, South America,